Hello, my name's Philippa Waller.
My name is Penelope Waller, and we are two of the directors at 4D Human Being.
And welcome to the 4D Human Being podcast. What's it all about, Pen?
It's all about your personal and professional relationships. It's about your communication skills, how you lead, how you work and build teams, how you are looking after yourself and your well-being, and how you are much more at choice. What do we mean by that?
Well, sometimes we can get a little caught in patterns in life and we can all be a little bit on our automatic pilot. So 4D Human Being is all about helping us get back to choice and being a four-dimensional human being. And your fourth dimension, of course,
is intention. So whether it's about your impact, your leadership style, your team dynamics, whether it's about your well-being, whether it's about your communication or your presentation skills, anything that involves human beings interacting with other human beings, 4D Human Being are here to help.
we're going to take a deep dive and look at some tools, insights, theories that are going to help you go from a 3D human doing to a 4D human being so that you can happen to the world rather than the world simply happening to you. Hello and good afternoon.
It is afternoon. It's a Monday afternoon.
It's less sunny than
Expected, which has slightly put pay to the plans today, actually, hasn't it?
well, it also...
And we're not really planners, but today we had a mini plan.
I had a mini plan to be out in the sunshine and it's quite grey.
And I've worn my big poofy summer dress with big poofy sleeves.
For those of you watching the clip, you can actually see that. But it does definitely speak to being in the moment,
Sure.
as opposed to planning along what the internet says and then making a plan
And sticking
rigidly to that.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
flexibility
That's
all the way.
That's true.
So we've come to the end of 5 leadership and relationship lessons from a silent retreat.
Yes.
Much.
I have to say, I absolutely loved that campaign.
Did you?
Really spoke to... I loved it for so many reasons. It really spoke to...
Because I was silent for 10
because you were silent for 10 days. I didn't have to be silent for 10 days. I didn't have to go on the retreat. And I still learnt the lessons.
And the
The lessons were so insightful and so linked to 4D and topics that I absolutely love. So loved all of it. And I
Yes.
didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
So I think the next campaign will send you on some kind of, some kind of crazy zip wiring abseiling adventure. You can do it and I can learn the lessons.
Well,
from it.
I haven't told you this. But I was actually wondering whether we do a thing where
crikey.
each month, so alternate months,
Right.
we buy an experience for both of us.
Right.
And I was thinking...
I'm not doing parachuting.
Well, that's exactly...
No, I'm not doing that.
Well, because I thought if I bought parachuting, I thought you'd say that. And then I thought, but that's a really good reason to do it. Because parachuting is the edge for us, isn't it?
I think it's well beyond
Do you think
the
it's
edge.
beyond the edge?
Yeah. I saw this thing on Instagram.
You might love it.
Well, I saw this thing on Instagram, which is it's like a zip wire roller coaster. So you're on a.
This is okay.
No, but this is okay because you're attached to something. So
Right.
you've got like this little zip wire, this wire coming up your back, and you're hooked onto what is effectively a track of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But you're just
Yeah.
you, and then you go around the roller coaster as if you were a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It's a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But you are attached to something.
Yes.
And I think that's my edge.
Yes.
Is not being attached. Even though that's not necessarily
Yes.
the safest thing in the world. I think not being attached to anything.
I really want to go full existential here. And of course, at the deepest level, we're not really attached to anything.
Oh!
Anyway, that's for another podcast.
All right, well, I do think discuss it with me before you buy
Yes, all right,
parachuting.
before I buy parachuting. However,
Yes.
segue in a kind
Dun,
of
dun, dun.
like an oppositional segue. Because what we want to talk about today are not the big, juicy adventure peak moments, but how to be terrifying trauma moments, but how to be 4D every day.
Yes.
And while we help our clients and leaders, sometimes we'll help them plan for that big presentation or that big visioning message,
Or big transition in a job.
or big chat or big strategic change within an organization, like we'll help with those communications. One of the things that we love to talk about are those micro moments
Of leadership and communication.
How are you showing up
100%.
in every moment? And not just Monday to Friday, but in every moment at the weekend? Because we've said it before, I'll say it again. We are not the person that we think we are in those peak moments. We're also the person who's getting annoyed in the traffic.
Yeah.
And we just forget this. So we're going to talk about how to be 4D every day. We're going to put a bit of science around that. There's so many topics around this that I'm so excited about talking about. We've both been reading and watching so many things on this. And also, having received an email from somebody in my network, it really made me think, actually, we're going to put some advice in here around the impact that you make and how to be more 4D every day in those tiny moments when you're down the street and somebody, stalls in front of you, or the traffic's blocked, or whatever it might be, or someone's not serving you quick enough, or Penelope, utility companies.
Don't talk about that.
When you can't get through to a human being, etc., etc. But also, we rarely talk about email.
Yeah.
And it's such a huge part of how we communicate. And how can you be more intentional in your email when email is a really good example of how we just default to getting the thing done?
Yeah. Because it's a quick thing. So it doesn't matter.
It doesn't
Just
matter.
quickly do
exactly.
That. Yeah.
So I want to go through this email that I got and go and look at, okay, what was the person's intention? Did they really have one? And how might you reword it? I'm not going to mention any names or anything. So we're going to end up giving some tips on the kind of micro filler moments in everyday life,
which is really what our work is about.
Yeah,
because it's really about the experience that you're creating. Yes, it's about developing your leadership or your communication or your team or your career. Yes, of course, it's about that, and it's about the experience you're creating for yourself and for others in every single moment.
In every single moment, being a 4D human being, not just being a great big event presenter.
Yeah.
And the thing about this is also that we all know the experience of working with someone or having someone in our network who stands up and gives a heartfelt, I'm all about the people, I care so much about people, they give an amazing presentation. And we know that in moments where they're a bit annoyed, that is not how they show up. And that gap is not useful for your profile as a leader.
It's not very sustainable either.
And it's not sustainable because it becomes inauthentic. We're going to talk about that word.
About that.
Okay, so daily moments. Now, the phrase that we love, before I hand over to you for the
science bit.
The phrase that we absolutely love, and our dear friend and colleague, Anthony, shout out to you, because I have seen Anthony write this on more flip charts than I care to remember from so many years ago.
Sticky, though.
Sticky, exactly. Sticky phrase. Is we used to open those big sort of week-long leadership courses with a few phrases on flip chart. And one of them was, put your attention on your intention. Put your attention on your intention.
Now, sounds obvious.
But your attention in this world of distraction and dopamine seeking, we're going to talk about
and negative bias as well.
And negative bias and media overload. Your attention is being pulled in so many directions. And
it's like a pinball machine in there.
Like a pinball machine. And your emotional dimension is working so hard to take your attention, or your intellectual dimension in terms of your overthinking.
Yeah. This is how our brains are kind of programmed to work in a way. For many good reasons. So if I think about this in terms of my own experience and how my brain works, for lots of us, it's pretty busy up there. Yeah. For lots of us, not for everybody. Some of us have a very calm mind.
I envy those
calm
people.
minds. I know.
When you say, "What are you thinking about?" and they go,
"Oh, nothing."
I'm like, how does that
I have it to such an extent that I might be in a meeting or a conversation and somebody might mention something. So like a random example might be, we might be having a conversation about cooking dinner or something, and somebody might mention a Le Creuset saucepan. Now,
that is very middle class.
It is very middle class. But this actually did happen to me. And then my mind has gone. I've gone down a tunnel of... I think I've got one somewhere in the back of a cupboard. Where did I put it? Did I put it in the cupboard in the kitchen? And I've got, it's just gone. Yeah. And suddenly that's where all of my focus and my attention is. Yeah. Completely irrelevant, really, to what's going on.
Darren Brown would love you. You sound very suggestive.
Totally. And it's there for a very good reason, because obviously we are trying to process a lot of data as human beings, and there's part of our brain we're going to talk about that is working really hard to try and understand which are the bits that I should focus on.
That's right.
Because they might be the bits that are going to save my life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's exactly right. So, and the reason this is relevant, of course, it's definitely relevant when we think about communication and messaging, because especially more and more with more and more neurodiversity, if you are flinging out endless facts and details, then you've got an audience of people whose brains do not know. They are pinging
around
where to focus, because we cannot possibly focus on everything. That's one thing if you're thinking about landing communication, landing messaging. And the other side of this, of course, is when we wake up in the morning,
where do our brains go?
And are we at choice, as we love to say at 4D, about is our attention
on our intention?
Or has somebody just mentioned a saucepan and our brain has just
They've gone. And it's really important because
that is not intention.
Exactly. It's not intention. But it will totally start to create your choices for the day, where your mind's going, whether you want to like start pulling stuff out of cupboards to find something, your mood in terms of how happy you're. So it's just starting to affect everything, and you're unaware that it's happened.
It's like you've taken a turning and you're like, I can't find my way back.
No, I've just got to keep going down this. Even though it's not proving a particularly pleasant turning, I'm carrying on. So there is a part of your brain called the Reticular Activating System.
Wow.
I know. I love the science bit. And we've spoken about this before in a different context. There are about 11 million bits of data that your brains are sort of bombarded with.
How many?
About 11 million bits of data.
How often is 11 million?
In every moment, you've got that amount of data.
That's why it's so exhausting, isn't it?
But your brain can only process about 26 bits of data.
Right.
So the Reticular Activating System is really important because it's your focus.
Yeah.
It's like the part of your brain that is being coded to focus on the bits of data that are going to be important. Now, the thing about it is if it's left to its own devices, it's going to start randomly selecting those 26 bits of data, going back to the saucepan analogy.
Yeah.
But of course, you have some control. If you put your attention on your intention, you're effectively going to be giving a message to your reticular activating system, your RAS, to actively consciously choose which bits of data you're going to focus on. Now, you can think of this in many, many ways. For example, luck is a really good way to think about your RAS.
Are you going to make me and all the listeners luckier?
So people who say that they are lucky people, there is an element of truth to that, because if you think you're lucky, you will start looking out, be looking out actively. You've coded your RAS with I'm feeling lucky today.
I love the name of this.
I know.
My jazz RAS.
You've coded your RAS with I'm feeling lucky today, and therefore your brain will start looking for things and opportunities that demonstrate that they're lucky or that could be lucky. Similarly,
can I just say, it's sort of so wonderful and amazing, and also terrifying in terms of
how much control you have. Well, for any of you who've thought about, buying a new car, for example, or perhaps having your first baby or getting pregnant, you will suddenly start to notice everywhere are the red car that you want to buy or people that are expecting a baby. So because your RAS has been so strongly activated.
Dogs, cockapoos.
Cockapoos everywhere.
When I was looking to buy Billy, that it was just, the world was awash with fluffy dogs.
And you think...
and I was stopping people on the street.
And you think, God, that's such a weird coincidence that suddenly there's cockapoos everywhere. But it's not. It's the same amount of cockapoos. It's just that your RAS is just noticing them, because that's where it's taking those 26 bits of data rather than the other random bits of data.
Are you suggesting that we can basically create a world that is beautiful, colourful and joyous?
Pretty much.
Sort of, or you could bias it.
You could certainly move down in that direction. Yeah, and it's also trying to overcome the negative bias, because our survival system will automatically be looking for the negative bits of data. But if you can train your reticular activating system to look for opportunities,
I love that,
exciting things or whatever it might be, you will start to see the world differently.
Well, you know what this makes me think of, which is a beautiful tie-in with a piece of work that we do in therapy, which is around safety and danger cues. And whether you've had specific trauma or developmental trauma as you've grown up and you've become hypervigilant, and your nervous system is absolutely wired all the time on hyper alert, you are absolutely programmed, and it sounds like it will be something to do with your RAS, what is it, your
Reticular Activating
System is wired to look for danger signals. Now, the way this is very relevant at work is you will be much more likely to see somebody's eyes flicker away from you while you're presenting, or to see two people look at each other while you're sharing an idea. And you'll be looking for danger signals rather than looking for safety signals, which is the smile from a colleague or the nod from your boss or the attention that people are giving. You'll be wired to look for the danger cues. And that's a real game changer in terms of your life experience.
Totally.
When you start to actively look for safety cues.
Totally. And I would really recommend thinking about your morning routine in terms of the first couple of minutes, because the RAS gets activated when we move into consciousness. So as we're moving out of sleep and into consciousness, the RAS will kick in. What have I got to focus on? And of course, for lots of us, and I include myself in this, one of the first things I do,
I know what you're going to say,
is reach for my phone.
Yep.
And then I'm looking maybe at some emails that mean I've got to sort something out, or I'm looking at the news, which is often not very cheery. And that is what my RAS has then been coded with. And that's what it's going to focus on. That's what it's going to be looking for. And that's going to create the experience of the day. So
which is another version of the casserole pot, isn't it?
It is,
because you've allowed that in.
Yeah, you've allowed that in. It's activated the RAS, and that's what you're going to focus on. So it is hugely important, and we have much, much, much more control over it than we think. Think we do. We think it's like it's kind of running the show on its own.
Yeah,
but we are coding it through our senses and through our choices, through what we're looking at, what we're hearing, and etc.
Okay, so the first thing is to become more 4D every day. And whether you are president, CEO, or part of a team, or a partner, wife, I'm going to say teenager even, family member, friend, neighbor. One of the biggest things you can do every day is put your attention on your intention. And we are suggesting you jazz up your RAS. So jazz your RAS, so your reticular activating system, that before you allow anything in, before anybody mentions a coloured casserole dish to you, before you look at the news, before you allow anything in or look at emails, or that you put your attention on, for example, and we're going to talk more about this in a slightly different way throughout this podcast, that you put your attention on. It might be a creative pursuit for the day. It might be acts of kindness. It might be a connection and relationship. It might be
gratitude and appreciation.
It might be making connections or networking, or it might be opportunities or idea sharing or innovation, whatever it might be. But where you would love your attention to go, that really marries with what your intention for the day is. If your intention is to get people excited and motivated around an idea, or energized or reassured, or whatever it might be,
or even curious,
that's going to be a very different start to your day. You're going to be looking for different cues and activating different behavior in yourself and others than if you go straight to, there's another problem come in, the news is terrible.
You'll literally see things differently and hear things differently.
So what's a good analogy? It's like you're opening a different door, or you're turning down a different pathway.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that really, it's a really good piece of science to think about when we think about the 4D work, because intention really sits at the core of everything that we do.
Yeah.
And there is a science behind intention, in as much as your intention, if you make a conscious intention, will completely change how you're living your life, the choices that you make, how you show up, how you impact, how successful you are. And that is because of how your brain will work differently.
Yeah. And this can form part of your daily practice. So if we think about becoming good at something, and Penelope and I have been very much going over our choice of sport for the 2028 Olympics. I mean, so many people, I gather so many people have done this, because some athletes who've clearly been doing it all their lives, but then take
or they switch though. Some people switch.
Or they take a year off and then say, I only decided to do the Paris Olympics in 2020. And people grab onto this,
like,
you and I included. And you go, did they only give themselves 4 years to train? Well, I could be ready for the next Olympics.
So I'm thinking, what sport could I do? I think we might have spoken about this on the last podcast.
Anyway, point being, That is absolutely about getting good at something, if you like, is about a daily practice. And we would absolutely talk about a 4D daily practice.
Yeah.
That what are you putting your attention on in terms of your intention to be more 4D every day, rather than either things just coming in and informing who and how you are, or just playing out the same patterns.
Yes, and this is quite different. We're going to speak at some point about this is quite different to goals.
Yes.
So goals are incredibly useful. Absolutely. Very, very pro goals, work with goals in terms of coaching journeys with clients. It's not the same thing as an intention.
And in fact, what's interesting about that is when we talk about New Year's resolutions, what's your intention for the year? That word really, most often, I think, is goal focused. My intention is to be able to speak Italian.
Yeah.
And it's the end point.
Or I'm going to lose a stone.
Or I'm going to lose a stone, or I'm going to get really fit, or I'm going to get a new job, or I'm going to earn X amount of money, or I'm going to be successful, I'm going to get an award. And they're all end goals. And equally, if we think about that even slightly less long-term focused, we can still think about intention in terms of task a lot. So we wake up in the morning and you might fall into the trap of thinking, well, my 4D practice is to think about my intentions for the day. Yeah. Right. Well, I'm going to complete that report. I'm going to sign off on that. And that is still task and goal focus. That's not quite what we're talking about.
And they're both really important. So a really good example of this that I sometimes work on with clients is when there is big strategic or organizational change in a company. So something big is happening. They've got to change teams around, come in, motivate teams to look at something differently, move in a different direction. Absolutely. The clarity and the setting of the goals and where the direction of travel is absolutely fundamental. And one question I very often ask is, and how do you want to be through this process? And that's about intention. That's about how you want to be as things are happening. They're both important.
That word how is really the question. What do you want to be? What do you want to achieve? Really, the experience of your life is how are you going to do it? Because there are so many different ways to become successful or to make a lot of money or to have an impact in the world.
You can leave a trail of destruction around you and you'll get to the end goal and it might not feel as satisfying as you thought it was going to feel.
No global names mentioned. So if we think about goals as those end goals, those achievements, those milestones, and we think about your intention being around the quality, the experience, the process, this totally makes me think of dance. So when you're learning a new dance, tango, foxtrot, that kind of dance, you're learning steps. And where you get to is you're trying to get the next step done and get to the next position. You're getting to the next sort of moment or hold. Exactly. And that's fine. And you can keep doing that, but you are absolutely going to hit a ceiling. And until you are really choosing how to be and breathe and experience the flow of the dance, that you can think about it like that game.
It's not just getting to a series of
points. And I've talked a lot with my dance teacher about the idea of join the dots. So we think about where you draw a picture by joining the dots. But the danger with it is it all becomes about getting to the next dot. Yeah. So we have to be very conscious about being in the moment of getting to the next dot, that the dot is just a marker as we move on to the next experience. It's not
the thing.
Yeah. And I just think that's so wonderful to think about. And I know it's such a hackneyed cliche, that enjoy the journey, but that is your experience.
Yeah.
And so your intention around what you want, Martin Buber, the philosopher and therapist, talks about the I thou, the in between. And if you think about walking down a corridor at work and getting a task done, relaying a piece of information or requesting that human being does something, that's very different from really having an intention around what the between us feels like in that moment. And that person is going to walk away as an object who's got a task to do or as a human being who's been met.
Totally. And I really think about this in terms of my parenting as well. It's been super useful in terms of that. I mean, if I think about what was important to me as a child, and this is largely how the education system is kind of structured, it kind of was focused on
getting the thing done,
getting that exam grade or getting into a certain college or whatever it might be. And whilst, again, that's really, really important, your childhood and your teen years are so short. And what's the experience that you're having during that time?
Yeah.
So I really like to think about that in terms of parenting. It's not that those end goals are not important. It's also, what is the experience in between those dots, if you like.
Exactly. And in dance, you move towards the next sort of moment or hold. And even when you're there, you're breathing just a little bit more.
You're in it.
You're in it and extending, holding the moment, and then you're moving on to the next thing. And actually, I think that's a really, really good parallel, good analogy for even in the moment of getting to the thing that you're getting to.
You're still in it.
Are you breathing? Are you all breathing in it and still living
it? They say this, don't they,
Yeah.
about some of the Olympiads have been speaking about their achievements and sort of talking about lots of them don't feel like they are very conditioned to do what you've just said. It really is about crossing the line or winning the medal. And very often there's not a lot of space given to enjoying that
the moment.
and even sort of reflecting back on the moment. It's absolutely, where's the next dot? And how am I going to get
Well, I've
there?
heard some of the athletes, as they were being interviewed about getting a medal, saying, my coach, I actually want to get back in the gym now. And my coach has said, I've got to at least give myself 24 hours to celebrate this.
Yeah.
But he wanted, or she or he, I can't remember, just wanted to get back in the gym and look at the race and correct what they didn't do well enough, even though they'd won a medal at the Olympics. Yeah. So that also makes me think of some of the James Clear work around process and being in the moment and incremental. And this is what I love about the 4D, the idea of the 4D daily practice, is it's not only to put your attention on your intention every day. There is going to be massive longer term rewards because you are building a muscle that means eventually you'll barely have to think about that. In fact, you can think about you could decide another intention because that one will just be playing out.
Well, that's exactly what happens with the RAS, with the Reticular Activating System, is that if you keep focusing your attention on whatever the intention is for the day, or you say you're lucky or you're looking for the positives or the opportunities, eventually when you ease out of sleep and into consciousness, that's where your RAS will automatically go, and you'd have to recode it not to go there.
So we've all got to make friends with our RAS, haven't we? Hugely.
100%.
So just to do one more dance analogy on this, because this came up yesterday in a lesson, that we were talking about another student who can get very frustrated when not getting something right, which I totally understand. But if you can't enjoy that 1% shift, if every moment of every day it's about getting the award or being perfect, you're going to live very frustrated and disappointed. Whereas if we can learn to enjoy the idea of a 4D daily practice, if we can enjoy that 1% where we've put our attention on our intention and just taken a second longer with somebody online or at work, in the office, to check in with them or have a laugh with them or have a moment or make them a coffee.
Or even appreciate ourselves sometimes.
If we can enjoy those small micro moments every day, our lives are going to be much, much more enjoyable. In the analogy of dance, you're going to enjoy your dance lessons as opposed to beat yourself up in every dance lesson because you're not an award-winning world champion. Yeah. So there's so much to be gained from it as well.
Totally. It's the life's work we are all absolutely passionate about.
And so there's one more thing to say on this, and this is also a nice bit of science around dopamine. So there's a great book, Dopamine Nation. I think it's been out for a while. Definitely worth a read in terms of our constant search for happiness, if you like, and for feeling pleasure is probably a better word. The dopamine hit. Yeah. And I think that, again, the danger is that can tip us towards looking for those big moments, in your case not parachuting, but those big moments of achieving the win or the big job or the whatever it might be. And we used to say in acting, once you got the phone call from your agent that said you've got the job, that was the moment, really. That was the peak moment.
Well, actually, even the moment slightly before that, with the anticipation of the possibility of
that's when dopamine actually gets released, which is why gamblers, even if they lose, keep going, because it's the anticipation, it's the not knowing whether or not you're going to get that hit. But because there's so much convenience, and we're more and more wiring ourselves to want more and more dopamine, more and more pleasure, the danger is that we're constantly focused
on the next thing.
And we're no longer in those, our attention is not on our intention. It's on the goal it's on the donut that's going to give us the pleasure.
And then we're never really present.
And of course, with that, you're exactly right. The actual receiving of the award, again, it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck when they got the Oscar, is no longer a moment.
No.
So, a few tips on 4D daily practice. What can we do every day? And one of the things I'm going to say, which is such a easy one, and I just love it, is quite simply, and this is when you're in person. So whether you're crossing paths with a neighbor or a family friend, or it's at a networking event or a social event, or whether it's at work, quite simply, quickly scan your body and see whether your foot, your shoulder, your body is
out,
slightly angled away from the person that you're talking to. You know what we do? We walk down the corridor. There you are. My right shoulder and foot are trying to carry on down the corridor to get to the goal. And I'm saying to you, it's so nice to see you. Yeah. Yes, we must catch up. Can you turn your body so you are right opposite that person?
Even for a few seconds.
Even for a few seconds. And in that body language, in that micro moment, you are communicating in 4 dimensions. I'm physically, emotionally, intellectually, and intentionally right with you.
Yes. And I'll say a couple of things on this, which is there are very good reasons why often our body language is kind of signalling away from connection and signalling, I want to carry on. We may be busy. We may not want to engage with that person about that particular thing, or we may think they don't want to engage with us. They haven't got time, or they're not interested. There's many, many reasons that sit below the surface. And in terms of what you're kind of coding your brain and the experience that you're having, just like you said, turn towards, be present in that connection, even if it's literally for 3 seconds, will completely change the brain state of you and the other person.
Yeah.
And then you can go, then you can say it's exactly lovely. But let the body be in and present
that moment.
just for that moment.
Yes, exactly.
Very different.
So that's one 4D daily practice. So other things you can do as you go onto a call or go into a meeting, of course, check in again with what is your intention? Now, if your intention is to inform people or to get data, knowledge, information, then that's your task.
Yes.
That's your job, your goal.
Yes.
What is your intention in terms of how you want to show up and how you want people to feel?
Yes.
And what is that going to do in terms of the one opening sentence that you say, or the facial expression that you have, or the check-in that you do, or how you end the meeting, or the quality that you bring to the meeting, the energy. So not just what is the goal, but how do you want this to feel?
Yeah. I'm going to slightly build on that with something that's in the same vein, slightly different, which is one way to think about your intention. And this is not the only way. You've listed some really great ways. One way to think about your intention is the kind of pronoun that you're thinking in. So are you thinking in the I space or the you space, the other person, or the we space, or the what we'd call the it space, so the world at large, the systemic space,
the company, whatever it is.
And the reason I saw something really, really nice on LinkedIn the other day, and it was an old proverb, which was, somebody came running into the village and said, there's a wolf, I've been bitten by a wolf. And the response from the other villager was, well, I've seen that wolf before and it never bit me. And because they're in the I space about, well, I haven't had that experience. Yeah. Yeah. So that person was not met. They may have had a wound from the wolf. They didn't feel believed, all of these things. And it's a really nice proverb to think about where our response can often go, because our attention is on the self. Yeah. Not always. Yeah. But one of the intentions I quite like to think about sometimes when I go for a dog walk, for example, and I can be kind of lost in I listen to a podcast or my music. If I set an intention in the you or the we space of, if I meet somebody and they stop for a chat, I'm going to find out something about them, or I'm going to see how they feel, or maybe offer some advice, or push it into the you or the we space. It's a totally different experience.
You've had some amazing conversations with people on your dog walks.
I have. When I'm in that frame of mind, which I'm not saying I always am, when I'm in that frame of mind, I had somebody get quite cross with me about my dog barking, and it was like he was kind of looking for a fight. He was getting quite aggressive.
His dog is quite small, by the way.
He is quite small. He does bark sometimes, but he is quite small. And he was really shouting at me. This guy. I walked on, but I could hear him. He started shouting at me again, and I just turned around and I walked up to him and I said, "Are you okay?" And he started shouting at me again, and I said, kind of what's going on? I think the dog's okay, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he started telling me about some really, really, really challenging problems he had with in his family. And that's really where that was coming from. But by shifting the focus onto him, it completely changed the experience of the day for him and for me. So it's not that we always do it. It's a choice we can make.
And as somebody very dear to me says often, which I absolutely love, sainthood is hard. Like we can't always do it, but we have it at our fingertips. And that is very empowering, that we can wake up in the morning and choose to look for moments of connection or opportunity, and to start almost to gamify it, to play it like a game, and to look back at the end of the day and realize that you've had some moments in that day that you wouldn't have had.
Yeah, you've made some choices.
If you hadn't, and it's choice. Yeah. And it's that thing of not just getting through the day on automatic pilot, but absolutely making choices. This is your life. Yeah. This is your...
And other people's lives,
Well, exactly. And one of the other phrases that I absolutely love is, or the notions rather, the concept is about being met. And actually, really one of the biggest healing pieces in therapy is to really meet the other human being, and so much of
and that's not saying the wolf never bit me,
and that's not that exactly that's saying, oh my goodness, what happened, how are you, what is there anything I can do? And if you start really thinking about what it is that we are charging on our treadmills for, to get recognition, to get awards, to be successful, to have money, you can almost boil it all down to being seen and valued and recognized, and really being loved, being valued. And that's about being met. And again, we don't have to wait for the award ceremonies to be met. We can meet each other in the woods, even in the middle of a little bit of a moment where there's been some anger. We can choose to turn around and meet somebody. Yeah. I mean, it's the best of human being, isn't it? It really is. Yeah. So, emails.
Oh,
let's discuss. So this is a sort of slightly strange postscript, having talked so much about behaviours and human choices. But emails is such a good example, I think, of where we can sort of separate ourselves from ourselves and go, well, it's an email. So it's not me. It's a piece of writing.
Yes, we don't even have that thought process.
Don't have that thought process.
They're just such quick things that get fired out.
Yeah. So the amount of texts and emails that we're sending, and I'm a big fan actually of emojis, because I think they do so much for us in terms of being able to communicate a little bit more of the intention. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I use them even on emails now. So when you're writing an email, these are they are you, they are coming from you, they're a piece of your communication.
There's an intention behind it.
There's an intention, and it might be unconscious, but you have a choice about what you write and how the person is going to feel when they open that email. Yeah. And that's not only about the other person, it's about you, because your profile, your brand, your reputation is also tied up with what you write. So we very rarely talk about advice on emails, other than sort of structuring and a little bit around comms, but we never sort of pick one apart. So I received one the other day, and it's a perfectly good email, but I thought it was a really nice opportunity to look at, well, what could some other choices have been? Now, somebody within both of our networks, as it turned out, this is not a client. There's somebody who are a service provider, and they had got hacked. So they sent an email, and it read like this. So in the subject line is hack at, and then the name of the organization. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then it goes, I'm very sorry to say that so-and-so's email account at company was hacked. They received the malicious email from a trusted contact. Unfortunately, it had a spreadsheet attached that took over their email account and put in some rules so that they could not see people's emails back querying whether it was a valid email. We've now got the whole thing sorted. I apologise for the nuisance. Yours sincerely. And the name of the person writing the email. Now, perfectly informative.
Yep.
Tells us what was going on for them, what happened and to who and why. And fine. Of course, from our perspective, and as I read it, I thought, oh, that is such an interesting email to pick apart in terms of 4D and put your attention on your intention. And then I spoke to you about it. And what was it that you said to me about where the intention was?
Well, for me, the intention was on informing, and also making sure that we knew that the individual in this company was not negligent. It was not. It's not their fault that it had happened. That felt like the main communication, which
is perfectly valid.
It's fine.
Yeah,
it's. I guess. Well, you go on to say what we then thought about in terms of what could have been an alternative.
Yes. So exactly. So again, it's absolutely fine. And you can totally understand that something like that happens at your organisation, your institution, or whatever it might be. And you want to very quickly communicate to people. And where your focus has been internal.
It's sort of not our fault.
Yeah, it's not our fault. And I want everyone to know that it's not our fault. And this is what's been going on. And this is what we've done to resolve it. Now, it's absolutely fine. But what's interesting, of course, is for the people receiving the email, I feel slightly removed from you, and I feel like I've been given a piece of information about what's been going on with you, and you are making it very clear that it's not your fault. So there is a choice there, even in the subject line, hack at organisation. Now, that immediately throws up,
have I been hacked?
Have I been hacked? A question, am I in danger? So you might, for example, on the subject line, the first thing you might do is set an intention to reassure. Just for example, had a hack, nothing for you to worry about, or want to reassure you.
Taking care of our lovely contacts.
Yes, exactly. So that might be a choice. That's a very different impact. And then you might go on to say that I wanted to let you know what's actually happened.
But don't worry, it's all okay.
Really want to reassure you, and we're really protected for this kind of thing. If anyone's got any concerns, do get in touch. This is what we've done, blah, blah, blah. But what is your emotional and intellectual intention towards the people who are receiving the email?
And we went on to say, if you have to send out an email to all of your contacts because something like this has happened, what an amazing opportunity to say, I'd love to catch up. It's been a while. I'd love to connect with you, or hope you're having a lovely summer, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Exactly. But exactly here it's
switching that focus, isn't it? Which again goes back to I always think of the pronouns. Where's the pronoun? Is it on the I? Is it on the we? Or is it on the you?
Yeah. So even if you are in a panic, even if something difficult is going on for you within a project, if you're sending out communication via email, exactly that. What is your intention? And also exactly what other opportunities does that provide in terms of that connection? So I think it's a really, really good example of when we get caught on what's going on for us and information and task versus what's our intention.
Which, of course, whilst both versions are perfectly valid and perfectly useful, it's interesting to think, going back to what this podcast is about, it's just interesting to think what's then likely to be the impact and the unfolding and the experience, both for ourselves and for other people, of those different choices. Possibly no different, possibly quite different.
Absolutely. If there's a call to action, in fact, we've got an event coming up soon that is talking about security, or to let you know that our offices are upgrading. If you'd like any, you might be thinking about this at your organisation as well, or we want to share information on X, Y, and Z that will be useful to you. But you've got opportunities there to start a conversation. Get in touch with us, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So
I would say for us, because of the lens that we look at, when our consciousness has kicked in a certain way, everything is interesting. Everything that comes your way, a conversation with somebody in the street or in a park, or an email that comes in, because you're looking at it through that sort of experiential and conscious choice lens, and everything is useful and interesting.
Well, on that note, become a 4D anthropologist, because you're exactly right. And we would say this to people around the big moments like presentations or big large scale meetings or job interviews, that the ones that aren't great are just as useful. To become a 4D anthropologist, become interested. why does that presentation land with me?
Yeah.
Why did I enjoy that so much?
Yeah.
Why am I bored in this one?
Yeah, it's like that parallel processing of the task and the thing and the conversation and what's actually going on, what's behind this, what are the behaviours, what am I learning, what am I seeing?
Yes.
So interesting.
Exactly. So as you walk into a meeting and two colleagues come in separately and both say similar things to you, like, oh, hi, Bob, how are you doing? It's always Bob. But you feel differently with both of them.
Yeah.
What were they doing physically, emotionally, and intellectually? Where was their intention? Why did it feel different?
Yeah.
And what can you take from that?
Yeah.
When you walk into a room?
Maybe we could set up a sort of a degree course in 4D anthropology.
Yeah, exactly. I've sort of already got my deerstalker on and my magnifying glass. Exactly, yeah. So we wish you very well. Start your daily practice. Get your raz jazzed in the morning.
Get your raz going the way you want it.
Get your lens on the world. What do you want to be looking for? What are you looking out for? What intention are you setting for the day? Put your attention on your intention. It is not the big moments of setting those 5-year plans that are going to change your life. It's your day-to-day 1% incremental over the year. That is what is going to change your life and make you more of a 4D human being.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 4D Human Being podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Do take on board some of the insights, tools and tips, because every time that you try something new to get back to choice, you are making a vote for the you that you want to become. And I love that phrase, Pen.
I do too. And please do share this episode with somebody that you know would really benefit from the lessons and learnings we've been chatting about today.
And of course, if you're interested in more from 4D Human Being, do get in touch. We run workshops, trainings, online, in person, conference events and keynotes. We've got the 4D OnDemand platform for your whole organisation. And we do have a free Essentials membership where anybody can sign up for absolutely free to access some of our insights, tools and tips. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to hear more. We cannot wait to hear from you and to carry on the conversation.